Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Lady Leadership Podcast. I'd really like to welcome my guest today, Suzana Bishop. So, Suzana is the Customer Experience Officer at Fed Square. Suzana's a mum. She's also got a wonderful husband, Ben. So, Suzana, let's just start by telling me how you got to where you are today. Just a small question to start with.
I suppose I got to where I am today open to possibilities. I've always been a very curious person, so I'm always interested in what comes next. And I'm probably a little bit too impatient as well, which most would say it's a bad thing. But in my case, it kept me on my toes, looking at what comes next, what possibilities are there for me in life, in my career, and, just that general curiosity.
So you're originally from Brazil and now you're based in Melbourne and you're, as I said, you're the Customer Experience Officer at Fed Square. How did you find yourself here?
I think it's again part of that curiosity, that love for different experiences. I traveled a lot, and I went overseas. Lived overseas when I was 17 in the US, and then traveled Europe. Made a lot of friends who were from Australia, and really loved the humor, the Australian humor, and just the very easygoing nature. And I came to visit Australia a few times and decided to do a master degree here at IMIT in Melbourne. I met my husband not very after that, soon after that, and the rest is history. Really, I established a life in Melbourne, Australia, which I love very much.
That's great. And so I'll just disclose we are actually friends and we know each other. And so I'm glad that you came to Australia, Suzana. That's awesome.
I'm glad I'm in Australia as well. I absolutely love the country. I love the city. Before I came to Australia, actually, being a Brazilian, you would imagine I would end up in Gold Coast or Sydney, but Melbourne couldn't have been a better city for me. It is a city of events and a city of different experiences. Nobody does it better than Melbourne. I think it fit me like a glove.
And so let's talk about how you found yourself in that niche, that event space, that customer space, because you've had a few roles in this. So take me a little bit through that.
Yeah, sure. I think one thing, and I love reflecting over this, and I look back in my career and I remember the feeling that I had every time I went into a live experience. So, take a concert or a fashion show. I remember this really amazing feeling of, being completely taken away from everyday life and going through something special. And I've always wanted to be in the behind the scenes, in the making of for something special of an experience. So I've graduated from PR and marketing early in my career, and then did a master's in advertising. But suddenly I was really attracted to the events area because of that love of the experience. So from tourism to venue, to then working at the Melbourne Convention Exhibition Centre, to then working at the Grand Prix, the Formula One in Australia, the Royal Melbourne Show. So very different areas and levels of live events. And then Fed Square, where we actually do a bit of everything. We're a bit of a venue. We produce our own events and have festivals, and we are a community area where we love bringing a lot of activities and experiences to the community. So it's almost it's the job where now everything comes together. Everything I've ever done before comes together in this role.
And I think, that's the nice thing. I can see that you're thriving. But let's talk recently then how COVID's impacted that, because that's been, being an event space and being a company that puts on events, how have you guys managed through COVID?
Oh, that was a shock. I still remember we had in March, we had an activation from the Grand Prix, promoting the Formula One. And
Yeah.
then the call came that the Formula One was cancelled. It was such a shock. And, we throw around the word unprecedented, but that was, once
Yeah.
in a lifetime. And at that time, we had to cancel everything we were doing, and the calls were coming. Pretty much we've had to close the square. So at that time, we thought, okay, we've got to do something. In the week after we closed the event and COVID came, we had probably about 80% decrease in our website visits.
Wow.
So at that moment, we said, we've got to do something.
Mm.
Let's recreate all of the physical activities into a virtual square. There's no other way. We've got to keep our brand alive. We've got to keep our experiences alive, and the commitment that we have to the community, at this time, to offer a value. So we went to the festivals, the multicultural festivals that we work with, and so Diwali, Polish festivals, and we started asking them for unique content.
Yeah.
We've got as someone that you and I both know, Ivy Evident, to come, and we recorded her doing yoga and meditation classes in the square, because people used to come to the square and experience that live. So
Yeah.
we wanted to recreate that. And most importantly, we used to offer architecture tours where we had tour guides taking you around the precinct and explaining the history of Fed Square. So we've done a 360 degrees video with over 100 points of interest throughout that journey, where
Wow.
you can stop and look at the history. You can understand about where the stones come from, or the pavement is made of, and really immerse yourself in the history of Fed Square.
I mean, you
So
guys,
that was
yeah, I mean, I was sitting there watching, and you guys pivoted, I think, really quickly and got on the front foot of that really quickly. And so was it that, what drove that decision making, do you think?
Well, we've always, as an organization, we conceptually we knew that we needed to do something virtually,
Mm.
but we felt that the audience wasn't ready. So we felt, so for instance, we have a camera that records what happens in Fed Square, and it's the most visited page we have on the website after our homepage is actually our Fed Cam. So
Yeah.
we knew people loved accessing our content online, but I think we were forced to be creative by the circumstances we
Yeah.
saw ourselves in. So we pivoted quicker than we would have. I always felt that we were going to have an offering online, but we probably rushed to bring that to life because of need and circumstances. We
Yeah.
also had all of our retailers closing their doors, and they were heavily and sadly impacted. So we wanted to keep them relevant as well. So our support to them was to bring masterclasses of cooking demonstrations and, cocktail making. We just wanted to be able to help that ecosystem that Fed Square have to
Yeah.
remain relevant and alive during that time.
Mm. And I think, I mean, that's amazing. And it's amazing, so you had that in your strategy. You've decided, you know what, we need to fast track this. How has that evolved then? So I think we all thought we'd be locked down for a couple of months, and, we're about to head into the 5th month, I think now. How's that evolved then? And what's that look like for next year for your plan? How are you planning, now?
Yeah, that's definitely really evolved. We thought we were so organized. We've had 2 years of physical program planned to
Mm.
deliver.
Yeah.
So we started working on a hybrid program where we will have a bit of both. So we hope that in February we can bring some activities back.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're thinking of those activities. How do they fit physically, and then how can they be repurposed virtually? But also, we're thinking of a website as a destination, where before it was a brochure. So
Yeah.
now our website, we want to curate games and experiences where people can really create their own journey and access all this content that we have in their own personalized way. So it really changed the way we think now about all of our channels.
Yeah, yeah. It's probably, like you said, it's brought to life what you wanted to do, and then had a much bigger need and a much bigger desire for it. And so let's just go back to you then, and how have you really grown your career over the years? How have you made that happen?
I suppose as in anyone's career, there's always a bit of a combination of desire, planning, and a bit of luck or destiny, as you may call it. But I've always been careful to look at the gap. So
Yeah,
wherever I was always conscious of what's my gap between where I am and where I want to be,
yeah,
or what I know and what I want to know. And
yes,
I think specifically with events, if I look back, I knew a lot about venues, more about sponsorship or commercial activities, and then I moved my next step to the career in my career to be able to grow my knowledge in that space
yeah,
and continue along those directions of looking at the gap. What's my gap has always been a big thing for me.
yeah.
I love that I'm evolving, but then I keep looking at the same time at what gap do I have.
And yeah, and then in terms of how do you fill that gap? And so you've then, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, then you've sought out, okay, how do I make that leap from where I am now to my ambition, and who do I need to help me, etc.
Exactly. And part of it is, it is your job, but part of it is also your relationships, your official and unofficial mentors, the people that you find insightful and interesting. And so it's a combination of things that I suppose looking back, I proactively sought
Yeah,
to learn and understand, studies, whether it is doing another course or catching up with someone that I admire,
yeah,
or actually moving into a different role and a different job, or even putting my hand up for a project that I
yeah.
thought would expose me to a certain level of skills.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I mean, that's absolutely, I think, we're definitely talking the same language. That's how if you're aspirational, it's how you grow your career by looking ahead. What do you want to do? How can you make that happen? Who do you need around you, etc. I love all that.
Yeah.
And so, what keeps you going then, and what motivates you?
I think I have this passion for life experiences and what it creates to a person. So I think what keeps me going and motivated is the idea that I haven't had yet, or the experience that I haven't created. So it's the thought of the possibilities and what can still come.
Yeah,
There's so much. I mean, you look around now at COVID-19, how companies and people have pivoted, and the creativity that has come out of the difficulty. And I think, I get excited about the next thing, the thing that
yeah.
I haven't yet come across.
And so,
Gets me out of
how?
bed.
Yeah, exactly. And so, how do you get creative? I suppose. How do you find? How do you explore that and make that happen?
I think times like what we experience, where you just can't go about the same way. It just forces you to think about different things from different perspectives. Is how can we deliver this differently? How is the consumer changing? That curiosity that really brings forth ideas.
Yeah,
And we make a lot of mistakes, and in our organization we don't mind making mistakes. I think sometimes you just I've got an idea. If we can afford it, go for it, and
Yeah.
then we'll learn the consequences of it. So I think just experimenting with ideas,
Yeah.
and then quickly moving out of them if they don't go your way, or
Yep.
being prepared to take a hit on something.
Hmm.
It's really healthy for organizations.
I like that. And you recently completed an MBA. How do you think that, and congratulations on that. That's a massive
Thank
effort.
you.
How's that helped your career, do you think?
I think the what it really forced me to do the MBA is to stop and reflect. We don't get that much time at work or in our lives. We just go on about things, and
Mm.
we're moving with the activities that we've got to do, and we've got our plans and our goals. But what the MBA allowed me to do is meet a lot of really interesting and smart people, and stop and think about problems, and again, and have that space for creativity to come, and enable you to think about things from different perspectives. How would that company deliver a new product, or what are the things that you need to consider? I'm a very active person, so I sometimes, and I said in the beginning of the interview, I'm impatient, so I rush to decisions. And
Mm.
I think the MBA has given me more space to consider different perspectives, to analyze data, to then come back to the plan. So it slowed me down a little bit to make
Yeah.
decisions, and
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good learning. That's a good insight, I think.
Mm.
And where do you think innovation's coming from at the moment? What do you think's driving innovation?
I think a lot of challenges and difficulties bring with it innovation.
Mm.
You're forced to stop and rethink. If you're facing something as the closure of your business, and letting a lot of staff go, it's going to make you want to work much harder to do something differently.
Yeah.
If you look at gene companies making antibacterial, there's so many innovation. There's so much innovation happening right now,
Yeah.
and I think if you look at times of difficulties throughout the history, it's the times where a lot of innovation has come through.
Has kicked off, absolutely.
Mm.
And so talk to me about being a mum. You're a mum to two boys. What has motherhood taught you, and how have you combined that with having a big career as well?
Oh, listen, motherhood is the best thing ever. It certainly has taught me about unconditional love and acceptance. You've got to do things a little bit different, slowing down, which is good
Yeah.
for me as well. Motherhood allows you to be a bit more in the moment and appreciate special time, because they grow so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you can see how my smile grows, and I talk about my boys. The best thing ever, I think. It feels like my best and biggest accomplishment.
Oh, that's lovely. And look, I can, yeah, I know that we're via video, but I can feel your energy when you
Yeah.
talk about your boys. Absolutely. And I've met them and they're terrific as
Yeah.
well.
And
And then,
it's, as you know, it's not easy when you're
no,
trying to fit everything.
yeah,
It's that constant rebalancing, and acceptance of guilt, or where you
yeah,
at in your life.
yeah.
But we able to make it work. I think they love looking at me working and enjoying what I do, and finding satisfaction out of my job. I think it's a great thing that they recognize as well.
Yeah, and that's a good lesson for them. And I think it's also,
Mhm.
I think children teach you patience as well, and that
Yes,
everything doesn't have to be instant.
yes,
Um, and
yes.
to spend time in the moments as well. And then, but I think as well, I've sort of said before, I don't suffer from guilt being a mother in terms of having a career. I mean, look, I think there's been times, certainly, but generally I'm happy to go to work and happy to have a career. How about yourself?
I feel the same. You know, when I don't feel that really successful men get asked the same thing. You know, are
Yeah.
you guilty from having this amazing career and having
Yeah.
children?
Yeah.
And I don't think, you know, I've met brilliant professionals, both men and women, that have beautiful relationships with their children, and work really hard hours, and you know, have really pressing and important jobs. I think I don't think we should be penalized from our passions and the choices that we make in our career. But you know, I don't want to lie and say I never felt guilt from, you know, missing out a
Mm.
game, but I think I've reconciled most of it to be okay with, you know, it's actually being who I am. So I think it's important to take the time to reconcile those feelings.
And how do you think, businesses or corporates should be supporting and advocating for women?
I know it's a bit controversial, but I do feel that quotas are important. I
Yep.
think there's still a lot of bias um, that we need to resolve, and quota is a good way to manage bias, which exists. We're very lucky in Australia. We are ahead of many countries, but we still have bias. We still have inequality, not only gender but also racial inequality. So we need to talk about it more. We need to
Yep.
be a bit more honest about how people feel, both, you know, all sides of the conversation, and we have to have programs, because if we're not actually taking steps to manage the situation and improve gender pay and representation in boards and certain areas of high executive level, they're still biased. You know,
Mm.
they're still
Yeah.
part of a legacy that continues. So I think it's really important that we take active steps, that we don't just say, oh, you know, times have been better than ever.
Yeah.
We have to keep doing more.
Yeah, and I think it is those programs and those plans. And I think it's also how corporations or businesses advertise for roles, and how they encourage women to apply, and using
Mm,
that sort of non-bias language. I think also, like you said, those programs. And then I think also, panel interviews. So actually, there's so
mm,
many times I've been for roles and I've just been interviewed by men, from the
mm,
sort of start to the finish. And I think trying to have senior women in organisations included, with the same sort of power making, as well,
mm.
decision making, to help bring and
Yeah,
encourage more women in organisations as
yeah.
well. Yeah.
That's a great way to reduce bias, because
Yeah.
you are bringing different perspectives to the
Mm.
table. I think that's extremely important.
Yeah. Okay. And so why do you think you've been successful in your career?
Again, I think it's curiosity, is a
Mm.
desire for what else is possible now that I'm here, you know, next step.
Yeah.
Maybe never being too settled, never, or, you know, always having the curiosity about, okay, I'm in a place I've never imagined at the beginning of my career, but
Yeah.
if I hadn't always, you know, if with every step, if I had wondered what it would be like in the next one, and maybe I can do it, and, you know,
Yeah.
going for things that, you know, I thought I would never be able to have a chance at, and really exposing myself. I think that's been really important, to get to have you know, a job that I love.
Yeah.
Um, Takes
And
time, but
yeah, and
it's worth
being a
it.
great, and it's interesting that you said you've got a career that you never thought was possible at the start, and I'm very similar. And I think it's because we didn't see women in senior roles.
Yeah,
We didn't see that was possible. And so you're a great
yeah,
role model for women coming behind you, that they can see, yes, you can be a mum, you can
yeah.
have a big role, you can do study, etc., and you can make it happen.
Yeah, and listen, I came from a different country. I didn't know anyone. I had to
Mm.
start things from scratch. And I think you think that success comes with people that know people, or they've gone
Yeah.
to really fancy schools and have big networks. So you never imagine at the very end, but it's all possible, and I
Yeah.
think it is definitely possible. And as you said, seeing and hearing stories of people that from all walks of life and all genders and backgrounds having had success, it's really important for the creativity of young people, you know, so they know it's possible.
And look, thank you so much for sharing your story, Suzana. You're absolutely right when you talk about, you know, because Melbourne's a very connected town and it's a lot of who you knew. And I think, you know, I still get asked what school I went to,
Yeah.
what school I go to. And it's been 30 years since I was at school. And so I think my life has changed a lot. But and so, you know, you are 100% proof that, you know, you can come from another country, that you can set yourself up and you can be successful. Let's just finish off with best piece of advice you've been given, do you think?
Best piece, and I've had some great advice along the way, but I think it's a simple one, but, you know, be proactive and not reactive. You start the wave, don't be caught up by it.
Yeah.
It's probably something that stuck with me, and that I keep in mind when I go about doing what I do.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I just think there's some great messages there for people that are wanting to grow their career. And thanks for being just such a great role model to women. You're terrific.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been such a lovely conversation.
Cheers.
Apologies
thanks.
for the dogs making an appearance in the back.
I did see your dog walking back and forth, but yeah, I'm surprised one of my kids doesn't run in actually. So thank you so much for your time today, Suzana.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.